We are going to crack into episode 7 of the deep dive, right, into NOVATECH, right? NOVATECH FX securities fraud cease and desist order from California. So in this episode 7, we're going to go back to November 26th, 2022. All right. And this is going to be an important episode because on this episode, I'm going to talk about my own personal story with NOVATECH. And this is when I pulled my money out. It was around this time. It was around November 26, 2022, when I pulled my money out. The majority of it, right? And I did well in NOVATECH. I had a lot of large sums of money in NOVATECH, right? I had large sums of money in there. And I pulled it out at that time. And I was one of the last people to get my withdrawals from NOVATECH. I may have been the last because like literally after my withdrawal hit, and it took a while. Because remember, they quit paying out in December of that year. They said, hey, we have to pause payments. You remember that? But we're getting ahead of ourselves. Let's look at the actual cease and desist order. NOVATECH FX securities fraud cease and desist from California. NOVATECH FX has been issued a securities fraud cease and desist by California's Department of Financial Protection and Innovation, the DFPI. Well, thank God for you, DFPI. Thank God for you protecting me. You know what the problem is, though? You know what the problem is? I never asked for your protection. You're just giving it to me without me asking for it. You know? I never asked for 50 police cars to be right down the street from my house right now. You're just giving me that, right? I was born into that. I didn't ask for it. Maybe I don't want your protection. Maybe I don't need your protection. Right? Maybe I prefer to be something called free, right? What a concept, right? The notice marks the first regulatory action against NOVATECH FX by a U.S. regulator. And just like I always do, I'm going to give you guys the actual order, right? Because I don't just talk, I actually give you evidence. And boom, there it is. The evidence is in the chat. You can check that out. And if you're watching this later, you just go to the live episode, right? I recorded this episode on 2/2/2024. Go to the live episode and find it there. DFPI's November 22nd cease and desist applies to NOVATECH Ltd., NOVATECH Advisors LLC, NovaPay LLC, Nova Trading OU, Cynthia Petion, and Eddie Petion. Okay. Following an internal investigation, DFPI concluded NOVATECH FX is committing securities fraud. And here is an excerpt from the actual cease and desist order. The packages offered by NOVATECH, Cynthia Petion, and Eddie Petion were securities that were neither qualified nor exempt from the qualification requirement under the CSL. The department has not issued a permit or other form of qualification authorizing NOVATECH, Cynthia Petion, or Eddie Petion to sell these securities in California. In connection with the offer or sale of these securities, NOVATECH, Cynthia Petion, and Eddie Petion made or caused to be made untrue statements of material fact and material omissions to investors and potential investors, including but not limited to the following. A, falsely representing that NOVATECH is a registered hedge fund in the United States. B, falsely representing that NOVATECH is a registered investment advisor. C, falsely representing that NOVATECH is a registered broker. D, failing to disclose that the offer or sale of NOVATECH securities was not qualified in California. E, failing to provide any qualifications to substantiate claims that investors' funds are managed and traded by experienced traders. F, failed to disclose that in March 2011, Cynthia Petion and Eddie Petion filed Chapter 7 bankruptcy in the United States Bankruptcy Court for the Eastern District of New York. G, failing to disclose that in August 2019, a debt buyer sued Cynthia Petion in the Circuit Court of the 15th Judicial Circuit in and for Palm Beach County, Florida, Civil Division for breach of contract and unjust enrichment. Unjust enrichment. Alleging that Cynthia Petion had failed and or refused to repay a loan. H. Failed to disclose that in July 2018, a mortgage lender sued Eddie Petion and Cynthia Petion in the Circuit Court of the 15th Judicial Circuit in and for Palm Beach County, Florida, Civil Division in an action to foreclose a defaulted mortgage on residential real property held by Eddie Petion and Cynthia Petion. I. Failing to disclose that in April 2018, a credit card issuer sued Cynthia Petion in the Circuit Court of the 15th Judicial Circuit in and for Palm Beach County, Florida, Civil Division for accounts stated in unjust enrichment. A judgment was entered against Cynthia Petion in the amount of $11,776.55. And J. Failing to disclose that in October 2017, a credit card issuer sued Eddie Petion in the county court in and for Palm Beach County, Florida, for accounted stated a judgment was entered against Eddie Petion in the amount of $4,740.56. DFPI goes to confirm that none of the NOVATECH FX companies or the Petions are registered to offer securities in California. And here's another excerpt from the actual cease and desist order. Pursuant to Corporations Code Section 25532, NOVATECH Ltd., aka NOVATECH Ltd., NOVATECH Advisors LLC, NovaPay LLC, Nova Trading OU, Cynthia Petion, and Eddie Petion are hereby ordered to desist and refrain from the further offer of sale of securities in California, including but not limited to investment contracts known as packages, unless and until the qualification requirements for the CSL have been met. Pursuant to Corporation Code Section 25403, any person who controls or induces another person to violate a provision of the Corporation Securities Law 1968, or any person who provides substantial assistance to another person in violation of the Corporate Securities Law of 1968 shall be liable for the violations. DFPI identifies NOVATECH FX's business model as a high-yield investment program, or HIYIP. NOVATECH was luring investors into what is known as a high-yield investment program. HIYIPs are unregistered investments typically run by unlicensed individuals and are often frauds. The hallmark of a HIYIP scam is the promise of high returns on an annual or even monthly, weekly, or daily basis at little to no risk to the investor. HIYIP's an MLM underbelly code for quote-unquote Ponzi scheme. And so there's this idea that this was a Ponzi scheme. Securities in the U.S. are regulated by the SEC, which with NOVATECH FX is also not registered. Similar web tracked 2.5 million visits to NOVATECH FX website in October of 2022, 66% of that coming from the U.S. Last month, Cynthia Petion, and this was last month as of the time of this written article, Cynthia Petion endorsed the claim that NOVATECH FX had been audited and approved by the FBI, and we did cover that on one of the previous episodes here. And then she said that she burned it, right? So, of course, there's no evidence of this quote of this supposed audit because Cynthia burned it. I burned it. Oh, okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Sure, I burn stuff all the time. I burn my audits from the FBI all the time. So, yeah, I completely get that. When the inevitable NOVATECH FX SET fraud lawsuit comes out, it'll be interesting to see whether the DOJ files parallel wire fraud and money laundering charges. So here we go again with the charges. You know, let's just charge everybody, right? You know, they're making money, and so they're not living like good little communists. And so if you're not a good little communist, they got a jail cell waiting for you. And believe me, they do. All right, so now here's the next thing that happened, and here's what we have to cover. When it comes to this, is that this cease and desist thing came out, and I already had Oh, that's a great question. Let me go ahead and hit the topic on that real quick. And I am going to get to the other chats, so don't worry. But I want to answer this because this is going to pertain to what we were talking about. Vaughn, not sure if you touched on this. Is there a link between business funds and Cynthia being a reverend? Some people become licensed ministers to move money through their nonprofit. So what you're talking about there, Blue Sky, is known as a 501c3. So 501c3 is a tax-exempt ministry status. Now, was she moving the funds through a 501c3? No, she was not. No. If she had, she would have been even more, being hit with even more fraudulent charges. But 501c3s, they, people who have those go to prison all the time, right? Because it's like, if you're tax exempt, that means that you're not allowing the government to rob you every year. The government doesn't create anything. They tax people like you and me who are out here working or creating things, and they steal our money once a year. Yeah, I mean, back before they had a word called taxes, it was called extortion. I know a lot about it, because of my family history. I'm Italian. My family's from Sicily. I know about extortion. It means that you're going to pay us to protect you. You know, all those cops that we have on the corner, all those jail cells? Yeah, we made that to protect you, and you're going to pay us, whether you like it or not. Oh, and if you don't pay us, we're going to hurt you. Yeah, it's called extortion. But here in the United States, they call it taxation. But no, she did not have a 501c3 that I'm aware of. And if she did, she was not funneling the NOVATECH funds through that. Now, this is the point where me personally, Vaughn here at the Unlimited Freedom Network, I pulled my money out of NOVATECH. And I was one of the last people to do so, because as soon as almost the day after I actually got my money out of there, they said, okay, no more money coming out. We have to pause the withdrawals. Right? But let's look at what happened before they did that. So NOVATECH FX rolls out securities fraud pseudo compliance, and I remember this well because I'm on social media, right? Not because I love social media, but because if you're going to be a business person, you have to have a social media presence. Okay. Now, a lot of you guys message me on Facebook. Don't do that. Or you message me on Instagram. Don't do that. Can I tell you something? I pay people to run a Facebook page. I don't read one message. I don't make one post. I have never logged into Facebook in years, right? I actually have employees who do a Facebook, they do an Instagram, they help me out with this YouTube channel. They do all of that. They do a TikTok. I don't do any of that. Right. If I didn't have to come on here on YouTube, I wouldn't. But it's just part of the way that life is, right? You have to have a social media footprint. You know what I mean? But I think that social media is going to be used to put people in jail because they're going to, and they did it to me. They went off of a post that I wrote on social media and they brought it up in my criminal case years ago, and they'll do it to you too. Right. It's just a friendly neighborhood warning from your friendly Vaughn. You think it won't happen to you? Think again, brother. Think again, sister. If they did it to me, they'll do it to you. Right? They're watching. Big brother is watching. Trust me. All right. NOVATECH rolls out securities fraud pseudo compliance in response to a California cease and desist order issued last week. And this article was of November 9th, 2022. NOVATECH FX has rolled out securities fraud pseudo compliance. In an urgent request sent out by NOVATECH FX investors over the past 24 hours, they are demanding. And I remember this well because I did not comply with this demand. I actually lost friends over this because people thought that I was like somehow contributing to NOVATECH going away because I had a social media. That's how high on crack a lot of the NOVATECH people were. That just sheep. Just sheep without a shepherd, man. The blind leading the blind. Go through your posts on social media. This is from NOVATECH directly. Go through your posts on social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, etc., and ensure that any and all posts with an ROI or any advertisement solicitations that have NOVATECH's name and logo on it gets deleted immediately without hesitation. Well, fuck you, NOVATECH. That's what I got to say. I'm not deleting anything. If you see anyone doing so, please kindly communicate/inform them accordingly. Not deleting or removing such posts means they may lead to having their NOVATECH account closed. Oh, I'm really scared. You're going to close the accounts anyway. You're going belly up. You're going under. Right? How did anybody not see this? Right? How did anybody not see? I just don't understand why people left their money in while this stuff was happening. It just doesn't make any sense to me. Oh, they're going to talk about the Howey test. You got to love the Howey test. Let me tell you something about the Howey test. According to the Howey test, everything is a Ponzi scheme, guys. According to the Howey test, God is a Ponzi scheme. God's kingdom is a Ponzi scheme. The world that he created is a Ponzi scheme. The government you live under is a Ponzi scheme. The Fed is a Ponzi scheme. Your job is a Ponzi scheme. Your business is a Ponzi scheme. Your family's a Ponzi scheme. Your relationship's a Ponzi scheme. Your dog is a Ponzi. Everything's a Ponzi scheme according to the Howey test. What a bunch of bullshit. The problem, of course, is that regardless of what you call your fraudulent investment scheme, it's still a fraudulent investment scheme. Hence the term pseudo-compliance. Oh, yes. MLM-related securities fraud in the U.S. starts with the identification of investment contract. This is done via the Howey test, right? Under the Howey test, an investment contract exists if there's an investment of money in a common enterprise with a reasonable expectation of profits to be derived from the efforts of others. Well, what the hell doesn't qualify for that, I ask you? With respect to NOVATECH FX, it itself is the common enterprise. Affiliates invest on the promise of weekly ROI, which satisfies a reasonable expectation of profits. NOVATECH FX represents passive returns that are funded via trading, satisfying profits to be derived via the efforts of others. Does that make sense? No. And so, having satisfied all prongs of the Howey test, NOVATECH FX's MLM opportunity constitutes a securities offering under U.S. law. Yeah, you know what else is a securities offering under U.S. law? My balls. My ball sack. My ball sack qualifies for the Howey test. This shouldn't come as a surprise. Behind MLM, I've identified NOVATECH FX as an unregistered securities offering in 2019. We maintain that any MLM company committing securities fraud does so because it's a Ponzi scheme. Oh, yeah. Getting back to regulation. The existence of an investment contract means that NOVATECH FX has to register with the SEC. Why? Because you have to, brother. You have to. You know, you have make sure you do all of your registering with the SEC. Why? Because you have to. Why do we have to? Because we said you have to. We're your friendly government. We're looking out for your best interest. Yeah. They aren't, right? NOVATECH did it, right? And this is what is likely will prompt an SEC lawsuit at some point. Yes, it probably will, right? Doesn't make it right. It just is what it is. Historically, when states start issuing securities fraud cease and desist, the SEC isn't far behind. When the federal regulator pulls the trigger, however, it can't be predicted with accuracy. Whether the DOJ will combine criminal charges, you never know. Certainly, there's been a recent trend from the U.S. authorities going not only after company owners, but also top promoters. That, of course, they're going to go after everybody they can, you know? Do you want to be safe from the government going after you? Here's what you do. Go to the welfare office, get on food stamps, get on welfare, get on Medicaid, and don't work. And go live in a housing project. And the government, I promise you, they will leave you alone because that's what they want you to do. They want you to be a good little communist. They don't want you to make money. They don't want you to create. They don't want you to work. They want to consolidate their power, and they want you to be living off of their titty, sucking on their titty for your milk. Until you get old, then they'll give you a bed to die on and a hospice nurse, right? That's the government's plan for you, and that's just about what they think about you, too. Okay, so while investors will scramble to meet NOVATECH FX delete the evidence directive, it won't have any effect on pending regulatory proceedings. Yeah, you forgot about one investor there, my friend, me. I didn't delete anything, okay? I don't need to delete anything because I'm not doing anything wrong, right? Sure, they can say I am. They've done that before, right? I know that they have the power and that I don't. But my power comes from a greater authority than them. And if he wants me to jail I will go. And if he wants me to not go to jail, then I won't. The SEC and DOJ have never lost a securities fraud related case. Well, what does that tell you? What does it tell you that they've never lost a case? What does that tell you? What does that say to you? The SEC and DOJ have never lost a security fraud case because evidence was deleted and quote unquote, this is not financial advice. Actually, legally, you do have to say that if you're going to promote a platform. You do have to say that this is not financial advice. Yeah, I mean, you think, oh, that doesn't mean you're protected. No, it doesn't. I agree. But still, that's what they want you to do. I mean, people are trying to comply with the law. It's just that the law doesn't care if you're trying to comply. They're going to ram one up your backside anyway, whether you're trying to comply or not. I love you guys that are just like, you know what you're like? You're like slaves who love your master. You love your master. The government's your master. You're a slave, and you're a happy slave. You love your massa. Yes, massa. I love you, massa. What a sorry excuse for a bitch of a person you are. You're going to get exactly what you deserve. And this wraps up episode 7 on the NOVATECH Deep Dive. I hope that you guys enjoyed. Drop me a comment. Let me know what you think in the comments.